The prairie was a living ghost, that morning, pale fog curling low over the dead grass. The horizon nothing but a blur of gray and gold. A lone horse's hooves broke the silence, slow and steady, until even they began to sound uncertain. The rider, a rancher by the name of Eli Mercer, squinted through the mist. His duster coat was stiff with dust, his hat brim damp from dew. He'd been tracking the buzzards since dawn. Out here, vultures didn't circle for long unless something ugly waited below. He reined in at the top of a shallow ridge. Below, a patch of red clay had been torn open by struggle boot prints, drag marks. A splash of blood turned brown in the morning light. Then he saw her, half buried in the dirt. A young native girl lay face down beside a broken rifle. Her dress was torn, soaked through with mud and blood. Eli swung down from his horse. Without a word, he'd seen plenty of death soldiers, outlaws, homesteaders left for the buzzards, but something about her smallness, the way her hands still clutched the earth, froze him. Hey, easy now, he muttered, rolling her gently onto her back. Her chest still rose, barely. A gunshot wound tore through her shoulder. Dried blood streaked down her arm. Her eyes fluttered open for half a second, dark, wild, full of pain and warning. She whispered a single word, rough and broken, but it hit him like a bullet. Red Elk. Eli's blood ran cold. He knew that name, a name he hadn't heard in years. The girl's hand fell limp. Somewhere, far beyond the ridge, a crow screamed. Then another. The wind shifted, carrying a low, distant rumble, not thunder, not hooves, but something in between. Eli lifted the girl into his arms, glancing toward the horizon where the fog thinned. Smoke rose from the valley, faint but real. Hell, he whispered. He turned his horse toward home. The girls weighed heavy in his arms. Behind him, the crows took flight, black dots swirling in the pale sky like omens. The prairie had gone quiet again, too quiet. By the time the sun broke over the ridge, Eli Mercer knew one thing for certain. Whatever he'd found out there wasn't over. It was only beginning. Eli Mercer's cabin sat at the edge of nowhere, a crooked line of timber and stone, framed by dying cottonwoods and wind-bent fences. It wasn't much, but it was shelter, and tonight, it was about to become something else entirely, a line drawn in the dirt between life and death. He kicked the door open with his boot, carrying the girl inside. The cabin's air smelled of smoke, leather, and loneliness. He laid her down on his cot, the only soft thing he owned, then grabbed a basin and poured what little clean water he had left. The girl's breathing was shallow, uneven. When Eli pressed a cloth to her wound, she flinched and muttered something in her language. Quick, defensive, frightened. Easy, he said quietly. Ain't here to hurt you. She tried to push his hand away, weak but determined. Her eyes flickered open, wary, measuring him. For a moment, the look she gave him could have cut through steel. He sighed. You think I'm one of them, don't you? No answer. Only the hiss of the fire and the creak of the wind through the shutters. He cleaned the wound as best he could, wrapping it in torn strips of his old shirt. Her skin burned with fever. He knew she wouldn't last without help, but help was 2 days' ride away. And the last time he rode into town with a bleeding stranger, he'd nearly been hanged for it. As the storm clouds gathered over the plains, the girl drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes she spoke names, sometimes prayers. Once, she whispered Father. Eli sat by the window, rifle across his knees, eyes on the horizon. The fog outside had thickened again, like the land itself didn't want to see what was coming. A coyote howled in the distance. Then another, he muttered. We got trouble coming, little one, I can feel it. The girl stirred, whispering in a low, cracked voice. They will come. Eli turned toward her. Who will? Her gaze drifted past him, not at the cabin, not at the fire, but toward something only she could see. When she finally spoke again, it was a whisper so faint, it barely reached him. Red Elk, my father. Eli froze. The name again, the same one that haunted him years ago, the same name he'd buried deep with his past. Outside, the wind howled harder, and the shutters banged once against the wall. The prairie wasn't done with him. Not yet. Night pressed down heavy on the plains. The wind outside carried grit through the chinks in the logs, whispering like voices that didn't belong to the living. Inside, the cabin was a world of its own, shadows flickering across rough-hewn walls, the fire throwing gold and red over their faces. The girl stirred awake again, her breathing steadier now. Eli poured a tin cup of water, lifting it to her lips. She drank, watching him over the rim, eyes still wary. What's your name? He asked quietly. For a long time, she didn't answer. Then, barely audible, she said nausea. He nodded. Name suits you. Her gaze darted to the rifle propped against the chair. You kill. Eli's jaw tightened. He looked toward the fire. Used to. She studied him, then whispered. For gold. He shook his head. For orders. Army days. That seemed to mean something to her. Her expression changed, not quite hate, but understanding of the kind that only comes from loss. Silence stretched. The flames popped. After a while, she began to speak haltingly at first, her English broken but clear. Men came to our camp 3 nights ago. Not soldiers, faces painted white. Wore army coats. Not real. Her voice trembled. They took food. Women killed my brother. I ran. Eli's throat felt tight. He stared into the fire until it blurred. He'd heard stories like that too many. Men who wore the uniform for protection, but used it for murder. You said your father's name was Red Elk, he murmured. She nodded weakly. Chief, my people wait for him. Eli's hand tightened on the armrest. That name belonged to the same warpath he'd once ridden against years ago, when he was young and proud and stupid enough to think the government's orders meant justice. You know him? She asked softly. Eli took a long breath. I did, a long time ago. What happened? He didn't answer. Couldn't some scenes didn't deserve words? The fire burned lower. Outside, the coyotes had gone quiet, too quiet. Naya's eyelids grew heavy again. They will come, she whispered. When the sun comes, Eli looked toward the door. His mind was a storm, guilt, fear, and something else he couldn't name. He reached for his hat, setting it on the table beside her. You rest now. If they come, we'll be ready. Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile, but something close. Why help me? She asked, almost dreamlike. Eli didn't look back. Because I once left someone to die, ain't making that mistake twice. The girl drifted into sleep again, her breathing steady. Her wound wrapped tight. Eli sat by the fire until dawn's first gray light crept under the door. He could feel the weight of old ghosts stirring in the wind, and he knew sunrise wouldn't bring peace. It would bring reckoning. The next morning crawled in slow, heavy, and yellow, like the sun itself didn't want to rise. Eli stepped outside with his rifle, boots sinking into damp earth. The world was too still. No birds, no wind. Even the air seemed to be holding its breath. He scanned the valley below his ridge. Smoke drifted far off, curling up from behind the tree line. Campfire smoke. Too many fires. Too close together. He spat into the dirt. Hell's coming early. From inside the cabin came a soft rustle. Naya had woken, pale but sitting upright. You see them? She whispered. Not yet, he said, but they're there. He walked to the fence line, eyes narrowing. Then he heard it, the faint creak of saddle leather, the rattle of spurs, and a low whistle that made his blood freeze. He knew that tune. A group of riders emerged from the haze. 6 men, dust-colored coats, rifles slung across their shoulders. The one in front rode tall, his face half hidden behind a red scarf. Eli's grip tightened on the rifle. The man pulled his horse to a stop at the foot of the ridge, and shouted up, Ain't no use hiding, Mercer. You got something that don't belong to you. Eli didn't answer. The man chuckled, voice rough and cruel. Girl's worth a heap of trouble, ain't she? Pretty thing. Pity what happened to her camp. Eli raised his rifle, sighted straight between the man's eyes. You best turn around. The leader smirked. You don't remember me, do you? Maybe you should. You gave me this. He tugged down his scarf. A deep scar ran from his jaw to his ear, an old wound, one Eli had put there years ago during a border skirmish. Cade Dawson. Eli muttered, almost to himself. That's right. Dawson sneered. You killed my brother. Now you're hiding a chief's daughter. She's a walking bounty, Mercer. Whole territory wants her dead. The rest of the riders laughed. Eli's finger tightened on the trigger. Last warning, he called. Ride out while you still can. Dawson spat into the dirt. Oh, we'll ride out, but not till sunrise. He turned his horse, giving a lazy whistle. The men followed him back toward the valley. Slow, deliberate, confident. Eli lowered his rifle. His heart thudded against his ribs. Back inside, Naya's eyes were wide. They will kill you, she said softly. Eli looked out the window, watching their silhouettes fade into the dust. Maybe, he said, but not before I kill them first. Eli moved with the slow, efficient economy of a man who'd learned the hard way that haste breeds mistakes. He worked the cabin like a blacksmith shaping iron, each motion deliberate. Boards came down from the lean-to. Nails were bent and straightened. Shutters were wrestled into place and barred with a length of raw timber. The windows were crossed with planks that fit tight enough to stop a bullet or slow a man long enough to regret his timing. Naya sat on the floor beside the cot, her wound wrapped, fingers stained with ash and a stubborn light in them that would not be snuffed. Eli handed her shells one by one, teaching the old patient motions without a lecture, how to seat a cartridge, how to close the lever on a Winchester until it clicked like a promise. She mimicked him clumsily at first, then with a steadiness that surprised him. When she loaded the last round, her breath came out like a small, fierce prayer. They set traps where the moonlight hit the yard, a hidden spear beneath a pile of brush. A noose looped under the sagging gate, a triplin tied to a jar of rocks. Eli showed Naya how to melt candle wax into a lamp of sorts, how to make the bullets mark a path of fire. He taught her how to listen, really listen to the thin sounds the plains made before violence, the way a hawk stopped calling, the way the grass went still as breath. Between tasks, they shared scraps of memory. He told her about a winter where frost ate the corn, and a boy who learned to tell lies to keep food in his belly. She told him, in broken phrases and gestures, about summer dances and the smell of smoke at dawn, and how her father, Red Elk, used to weave stories into dawn's first light. The words were small, but the silences between them were heavy with things neither wanted to say. Outside, the horizon bled pale. Eli set a single lantern in the window, not to invite, but to confuse. He sharpened a knife until it sang. He tucked a pistol into the floorboard and leaned a spare rifle where the door would swing. At one point he paused, looking at the girl beside him. "If they come for you," he said, quiet as the dust, "you don't run. You make 'em pay every inch." She looked up, meeting him, and for the first time the fear in her eyes split into something that might be called trust. She nodded once. "What would you have done?" Eli asked the empty room, and the question wasn't just for her. What would you have done? Watching this little house become a battlement, would you have fled under the moon, or stayed to face the dawn? They ate a thin stew and listened to the wind beat the cabin like a fist. Night pooled in the corners. Guns were checked again. Hands were steady. When the first distant shout rose across the prairie, Eli lifted his rifle and felt the old readiness stir, a bitter, fierce thing he hadn't felt since he was young and certain of the world. The wind howled low and mean that night. A voice from the dark hills, warning them both that time had run out. The lantern light swung in slow arcs as the storm gathered, shadows crawling across the cabin walls like ghosts trying to claw their way in. Eli checked his rifle again, thumb resting on the worn brass of a single cartridge. Beside him, Naya loaded the last shell into the Winchester, her lips pressed tight. Outside, the prairie had gone black, save for the faint orange flicker of torches in the valley below. Then came the sound. Horses, many of them, moving slow and deliberate through the grass. "Positions," Eli muttered, voice barely a whisper. They took cover. Eli behind the table he'd flipped on its side. Naja near the stove, eyes fixed on the door. A voice called out through the dark. "Mercer, we ain't here to talk this time." Cade Dawson's laugh echoed off the hills, the kind of sound that made the skin crawl. A rifle cracked. The window exploded in a shower of glass. Eli returned fire, his shot sparking off a rock, where one of the raiders crouched. Then the siege began. Bullets chewed through the cabin walls. Wood splinters rained down like hail. Eli fired, ducked, reloaded. Naya passed him cartridges with trembling hands but steady eyes. The girl who'd been half dead in the dirt now fought like someone who'd been born for it. The raiders circled, whooping and firing, their torches painting streaks of fire across the dark. Eli picked one off at the gate, another at the trough. Each shot echoed like thunder across the prairie. Then, silence. For a long moment, nothing moved. The night itself seemed to hold its breath. Eli's shoulders tensed. He knew this trick. He leaned to the window, and that's when the wall behind him burst inward. The back door, the one he'd forgotten to reinforce, exploded in a storm of splinters. Cade Dawson came through it like a devil from the pit, revolver in one hand, hunting knife in the other. "Thought you could hide behind old scenes, Mercer," he hissed. Eli swung the rifle, but Cade struck first. The butt of his gun slammed across Eli's jaw. The rifle dropped. They crashed into the table, sending it splintering against the floor. Naya screamed, grabbed the pistol from the stove, fired, missed by inches. Cade kicked it away and lunged for her. Eli tackled him, both men rolling through broken wood and glass. They fought in the dim light, grunting, fists landing with the sick thud of bone on flesh. Cade was faster, meaner, feeding on years of hate. He slammed Eli's face into the floorboards. "You killed my brother, old man. You killed my future. Now I'll kill yours." Eli's hand shot up, catching Cade's wrist before the knife came down. They strained, eyes locked, faces inches apart. "Your brother burned their camps," Eli spat. "He earned his death. Then earn yours." Cade growled and drove the knife down. It stopped halfway. A gunshot split the cabin open. Cade's body stiffened. He turned slowly, eyes wide. Naya stood behind him, smoke rising from the pistol she'd snatched off the floor. The outlaw slumped sideways, knife clattering from his hand. For a long time, nobody spoke. The storm outside raged on, rattling the roof and shaking the door like it wanted in. Eli looked at the girl, blood on her face, hair tangled, shaking, but alive. "You did good," he whispered. She tried to smile, but her body gave out. He caught her before she hit the floor. Outside, another sound began, faint at first, like a distant drumbeat hooves. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Eli staggered to the window. The horizon was alive with movement, torches stretching across the plains like a river of fire. Warriors. Naya stirred in his arms, voice barely a whisper. "My people." He felt his breath leave him. They followed the smoke. He laid her on the cot again and stepped outside, gun in hand, but this time, not to fight. The dawn light cracked open the clouds, washing the prairie in silver and red. The warriors surrounded the cabin, silent, watching. At their head rode a man older than stone, wrapped in feathers and leather, the kind of presence that made the world itself seem to pause. Naya lifted her hand weakly, toward him. "Father," she whispered. The old chief dismounted. Eli lowered his rifle and waited. The storm broke at dawn. Rain swept over the prairie, heavy and silver, washing blood from the earth and smoke from the cabin walls. The sky itself seemed to sigh. Eli stood in the open doorway, soaked to the bone, rifle lowered. The warriors surrounded him in a wide circle, silent as gravestones. Their faces were painted with mud and ash. Their eyes, ancient and unreadable dot, at their center sat Red Elk. His hair was streaked with white, his shoulders broad despite age, his gaze sharp enough to cut through years. Two riders dismounted and lifted Naya gently from the cot, carrying her forward. Eli didn't move. He didn't speak. He only watched as the old chief bent over his daughter and pressed a hand to her forehead. A long silence followed, broken only by the rain hitting the roof in slow, steady rhythm. Then, Red Elk looked up, who kept her breathing. He asked in a low voice. Eli hesitated. I did. The chief studied him, the coat still stained with dirt, the hands blistered from building barricades, the eyes that had seen too much killing. You were once among those who brought fire to my people. The chief said. Eli nodded. And I've been paying for it ever since. Naya stirred, whispering something in her father's tongue. Red Elk listened, then gave a single nod. He rose slowly, walked to Eli, and for a moment, the two men simply stared at one another, one burdened by vengeance, the other by guilt. The chief raised his hand. The circle of warriors parted. No one aimed a weapon. No one spoke. Rain ran down Eli's face, into his beard. He didn't know if he was being spared or judged. Only that something inside him, something dark and old, had finally come undone. Red Elk's voice was rough but steady. The girl says you did not flee, that you bled beside her. Go, then, live with that choice. The land will remember. Then he turned away, mounting his horse with the slow grace of age. The warriors moved out, one by one, torches hissing in the rain, until only smoke and hoofprints remained. Eli stood alone again. The cabin was half-ruined walls, splintered, floor-soaked, but the girl lived. The land still breathed. He took up a hammer and began to rebuild, nail by nail, board by board, breath by breath. And when the last plank was set, he hung Naya's beaded bracelet on the window frame, a token of something sacred that words couldn't name. The wind shifted east, carrying away the smell of gunpowder. Dawn broke clean and quiet. The prairie, for the first time in years, felt like home. Some men ride their whole lives running from ghosts they can't see. But out here, on the edge of the world, ghosts don't chase, they wait. Eli Mercer found his reckoning, not with a bullet, but with mercy. And in a land built on vengeance, that's rarer than rain. He pauses. Maybe the West wasn't tamed by guns after all. Maybe it was tamed by the ones who chose not to pull the trigger. The camera lingers on the cabin, smoke rising from its chimney, bracelets swaying gently in the morning wind. If this story found a place in you, saddle up, subscribe, and tell me in the comments below, what would you have done at sunrise? Fade out with the faint sound of hooves fading into the horizon.